So in games that have dialogue that doesn't have like VO, a lot of the time I got this idea from Troidel, our other streamer on the Geek to Geek Media Network. He does all kinds of like interesting voices. So I was like, you know what, I'm going to try that. And somehow I end up with games that have just like hours upon hours of dialogue. Like I gave myself a sore throat on one of my last streams because I had like 6 different characters and I decided to give all of them like distinct voices, some of which were like female or child characters, and like having to pitch my voice up and down constantly just wrecked my throat. Which was, of course, a fun thing to explain at the office the next day.
No, that's great. I mean, that sounds like an absolute blast. I mean, that's the type of thing that's very much up my alley. But no, I get it. Like, when I have to do things where I'm talking for a long period of time or recording voice work for a long period of time, it's tough because you want to sound this, depending on what you're doing. So, like, I'll do some freelance work on the side for an old work of mine where I record narration for them. But you want to sound the same when you start as you do when you end. But you've been talking for like an hour and a half now, and or when it gets later, like my voice drops, you know, later on at night, because you've been up all day or talking all day, your throat's more relaxed.
Right.
It's tough. It's tough to try and maintain that. I have nothing but respect for voice actors that can manage to sound the same, and we don't know if they're recording at 6 in the morning or 10 o'clock at night.
Yeah. Like, 'cause sometimes, and just like, and week to week, keeping your character's voice consistent too, which of course, if you listen to like episode 1 and episode like 500 of The Simpsons, they sounded pretty different at that big of a span. But, you know, at the beginning of a season and the end of the season, Homer still sounds like Homer and Marge still sounds like Marge, and how they do that, it's really amazing.
Yeah, yeah. Well, it's like Jim Dale, is it, who did the American version of the Harry Potter books, and he would have to go back and listen because there's so many characters, and he created a voice for each one, but he couldn't remember what exactly that voice was.
Yeah, and that's something that I struggle with a lot when I'm streaming a long game, because sometimes it'll be like a character we met in like chapter 1 of the game shows up again 25 hours later in the campaign, and I'm like, wait, did I give him a southern accent, or was he gravelly or high pitched?
Right.
Or
you would almost have to have a spreadsheet on the side where you're like, all right, Gong Yu, I'm going to read Gong Yu as, and then like in your head be like, you know, the kid from whatever, you know, the neighbor boy from The Incredibles.
Yeah.
You know.
So I'm not reading this dialogue out loud because this is all just like NPC, you know, not plot advancing stuff. But I have noticed every single person does have blue hair, and the first thing they say when they speak to Adol is, wow, red hair. Which is kind of fun. Amusing.
Though the image of Durin there shows him with white hair.
Yeah, it does look white there. Like his character model is more bluish. And I've noticed every time you go into a weapon or armor shop, the character has to explain what like a weapon and armor shop is. Like, this is the weapon and armor shop. It's here where you can buy weapons and armor. I'm like, thanks. Thanks for the tip, buddy. But I guess like
that you use to fight things and armor that you wear to protect yourself from harm.
Like the very first town you go to, Durin is following you around, and he's like, since I know you've lost your memories, I'll keep you up to speed on stuff. And when you go into a armor shop the first time, he's like, this is the armor shop. Armor is protective equipment you wear for combat purposes. And I'm like, really? Are we going to do that?
This is a sandwich. A sandwich is for eating. This is a comb. A comb is not for eating.
Granted, I have no idea how real life amnesia works. I don't know to what extent people forget things.
Sure.
I always kind of go by the sort of, like, have you seen the movie Memento?
Of course.
Yeah, so I always kind of go by the memento thing, that it's only your short-term memories, and that you'd remember what a sandwich is, and you'd remember that armor is protective equipment, but not remember you met someone 3 days ago, you know?
Right. So if you're able to run around and explore the town before you go to the thing, are you thinking boss fight? Is it one of those type of things?
Yeah, that's always kind of my precaution, and granted, this has been, like, baked into me from, like... Oh, hold on, we have some cats fighting in the background. I don't know if you can hear the cat sounds. Actually, I have a command where people in the audience can input it and some little cat emoji appear in the chat, because my cat's interrupting a stream is such a recurring thing. But yeah, old video games have got me in the habit of, like, when an NPC says, hey, you should go over here because something important is going to happen, that I go, like, the opposite direction and do everything else first. Because, like,
Right.
there's some old games where you, like, go to the next quest objective, and that triggers a cutscene where the village burns to the ground, and then you're like, well, I'm not going to be buying any of that protective clothing for combat purposes in that store I heard about, you know?
Yes, I'm very much that way too, and that adds, I think, so much time onto some of the games that I play, because I'll pick up a game, and I won't know that that's against the point. Like, again, listening to Void and Beach, right, when they were talking about how much they loved Firewatch, and Firewatch is a linear storytelling game where you're just supposed to play through the story. Instead, I'm going everywhere I'm not supposed to go, trying to find, like, every single corner, whatever, of the map that like, you're just supposed to enjoy the story and play it as that person, you know, would act, rather than I'm like, nope, it's a video game, there's going to be something hidden, there's going to be an item that I need, or, you know, that extra gold coin that you're always used to in video games that's hidden around the corner somewhere.
Yeah, I know exactly what you mean. Rose and I played through that one together, and I have to say, like, partly after the emphatic recommendations from Void and Beach, and I have to say, like, I wanted to like that game, and it did not gel with me. Like, when the video gaminess of it kind of, like, faded away, when I'm like, oh, all I'm doing is walking from point A to point B to give the game enough time for the, like, voice acting to play out. Like, when I could kind of see the wires,
Right.
it was kind of, like, lost to me.
Gently interactive storytelling without you actually having any control
Yeah.
in what's going to happen. Yeah, but again, for me, it was more of like, oh, I'm sure that must have been a really cool game. I wasted so much time going to every area that I shouldn't go to because I wasn't moving the plot forward. Like, I was going to the other side of the whole area as far as they would let me go, because I was just looking around because I didn't know if I would get to do that later on. And I think that ruined that game for me.
Yeah. Yeah, I guess, yeah, that would be. And I think we did some of that in the beginning, too, where we were, like, really wandering around. Because I think part of it is we didn't know what type of game it was at first. So similarly, we're like, oh, well, this game is alluding to something really ominous happening. We better see if there's weapons we can find. Or, you know, for a little while, I think we were kind of in that mindset, too. And at a certain point, it kind of became clear that wasn't the sort of game it was. So I think we still finished it in a single sitting, but it was kind of a long session.
Right. Yeah. You know, I'm too used to the Batman Arkham games where, you know, you're playing the level, but hey, you know there's a Riddler trophy hidden here somewhere. And, you know, really, I think it comes down to Wolfenstein 3D and Doom, because those were the first ones where it's like, especially Wolfenstein, it was like you're going down this hall, behind one of these paintings is a hidden room. So you were just walking down the hallway going click, 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 waiting to figure out which one is the hidden room.
Mm-hmm.
And it just sucks so much out of the gameplay. But I'm not the kind of person that likes to play a narrative game twice. I'm not a new game plus kind of person most of the time.
Yeah, I know what you mean. Like, that's kind of why I do blind playthroughs on my streams, because, yeah, it's so rare that I can come back to a game a second time with, like, enthusiasm, unless it's, like, some kind of arcadey sort of thing where you just sit down and blow some stuff up, you know.
Right. Like Super Hot.
Yeah. Actually, I got stuck in that game. I never finished it. It was really
There's-
cool though, but I just never got like the knack for it.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't know why it clicks with me. There's certainly a couple of levels on there where it took a long time to. One of them is you're in an elevator, and
That's the one I'm stuck on.
yeah, and there's 3 people holding guns on you, and you have to figure out how you're going to do this and who to hit first, and then the door opens, and there's somebody standing with a shotgun right there, and it was one of those like, I think I hit everybody first, or I hit like 2 people first, so they dropped their guns while moving out of the way and barely letting the bullet miss me. And then I think I threw the gun out the door so it hit the guy with the shotgun, moved forward and took the shotgun, ran past everybody else, then turned around and started firing and throwing things. I don't know. It was a tricky one.
Yeah, I think.
We're in an abandoned house now.
Yeah, apparently this house was owned by someone that Durin knew long ago, and that's all he'll say about it. So I'm sure we'll find some tragic backstory of some character we haven't met yet.
Is this generally a sad game?
Kind of, but it's the sort of game that might, like, I'd say the overall tone is pretty happy, but like there'll be like arcs that have sad parts, but then it's like, oh, well, that was sad. Anyway, on to the next thing.
Gotcha. It was a nice place that had a very open floor plan.
Yeah,
Very roomy.
and yeah, I am kind of doing that, like, and the thing is, even though I know this is not the sort of game where like you walk into someone's house and there's a bunch of treasure in the back room, I still have to go into every building and like look around and talk to the one NPC before I go trigger the next plot point anyway.
Yeah,
Like, I can't
one of the
help
hardest
myself from
things
doing
for
it.
me are games where the NPCs have multiple things to tell you.
Oh, and you have to like click through dialogue more than once.
Well, just, you know they're going to say something different, and you want to know what it is. Like, especially, and again, I'm going to go back to the Batman Arkham games, because I'm such a comic book geek, you never know when they're going to drop a random reference to something from the comics, and it's like, that shouldn't be enough to make you do that, but I'll just sit there and keep like, oh, I can talk to the bad guy in the jail cell. I'm just going to keep doing it because he's saying something different every time. And if I haven't listened to every piece of audio recorded by these voice actors, if I don't get to hear everything that Mark Hamill says in the Joker's voice, I'm missing out somehow.
Hmm.
And it's understanding that, like, what's the experience you want with this game? And what I want is just the linear gaming experience. But those open world games where you can talk to people multiple times and they'll say something slightly different, nothing useful, just something different.
Right.
I sometimes get trapped in that loop, so I completely understand.
So apparently this is Frida's mom that we just met.
Oh,
I don't know if that's going to be useful later.
got a blue fire going there in the hearth.
They like blue in this town.
It's a blue.
Yeah.
They do. I mean, it looks like the chairs are blue. The books on the shelf over there are blue.
Just a thematically consistent place. But when you were saying about like lots of lines of dialogue, I have a hard time with games where it gives you a choice, where like you talk up to a certain point and then it asks you like how you want to respond.
Yeah.
It's taken me a very long time. I've kind of shaken myself from it now, of not like quick saving before the choice, picking one option, hearing what happens, and then like reloading my save state, and then picking the other choice to see what happens.
I've certainly done that a couple times with games like Fallout and Skyrim, because I put a lot of hours into both of those. And every once in a while, when I know it's a big decision, I'll save, and then I'll go back and say, oh, okay, that's what it was. And then I'll go back to now I go on YouTube.
Yeah,
Like
that's
in the
helped a
Batman
lot.
Arkham game, in the Arkham Knight, spoilers, one of the, I think it's part of the DLC. I'm sure I must have downloaded a Game of the Year edition or Complete edition or something. But basically, you have two choices when it comes to Ra's al Ghul. And different things happen. It doesn't affect the overall game. The story will still end the way the story is meant to end, but on this side quest, how that ends depends on your choice. And there's a couple times that happens with a couple different characters. And so for that, I just go on YouTube and see, well, what's the difference? How does it affect, you know, any of the cut scenes or whatever? And then I'll watch the different way, you know, or when games have multiple endings. Like you know, Fallout certainly has that. I've heard Mass Effect has several endings. Those types of games where your decisions actually impact the game itself. That's what YouTube is for.
Yeah, I do the same thing with if it's one of those where like it's going to diverge. Maybe if it's a 40-hour game and there's a divergence point at like hour 20 where I'm like, I'm not going to add another 20 hours to my time with this game. So yeah, that's when it really branches like that with different endings. Or I think Japanese games tend to do this more than Western games, where it'll be like, to get the true ending, you have to do some really difficult feat, like beat a boss that you have to be level 100 to have a chance of beating or something, where I'm like, I could do that, but I don't have the time to grind my characters up to a level 100 and fight a boss just to see an extra 10-minute cutscene. So yeah, YouTube is a godsend for stuff like that.
Yeah, I'm trying to become more of that gamer, and I told myself I was going to do it with Arkham Knight. Is just, I'm just going to play the game, but then they hooked me. Usually it's a thing where, you know, there's 250 Riddler trophies or whatever scattered around, and that includes things you have to blow up, physical trophies to find, riddles to solve, and I'm like, I'm not really interested in that. And then it's but Catwoman is stuck in this thing, and you need to solve X number of riddles or whatever before she can get out. And then they're like, and now you're going to fight the Riddler and this giant robot. Awesome. And he's like, nope, you don't get to fight me until you solve literally every riddle in the game. And he disappears into the floor. And I'm like, oh, you suck. Because then I had to go and solve all of the riddles. You know, I used the internet a little to help me, but I had to go and find all of the riddles in the game and solve them so that I could beat up the Riddler.
That does sound satisfying, though, when you finally do it.
It was just every once in a while I'd run into ones, and I would spend like 40 minutes trying to figure it out, only to look online and they're like, why are you doing this one now? You need a gadget that you're not going to get for another, 4 main story missions.
I do that all the time.
Oh, I hate it so much. I hate so much either knowing that I did something way before I should, so it's going to affect the story, or more often, I'm spending a ton of time trying to get a thing that I'm not supposed to get yet. And I will just waste, an hour and a half looking for a thing that I know is there and can't find a way to, because it's going to just magically show up, towards the end of the game when I have to return to this area, and I just don't know that I'm going to be returning to this area.
And then you have that moment where you're kicking yourself, where you're like, maybe where all those NPCs were heading west, telling me to head west, maybe I should have actually headed west rather than going north, south, and east first, and I could have avoided this. That like impulse to avoid advancing it is like in spite of yourself.
Yes, exactly. It's very much an issue that I have.
So right here on the screen, I feel like this character, though, is kind of validating that instinct that I think you and I both have. I was about to enter this building, and she says, if there's anywhere else you want to see, I suggest we go see it before heading inside.
So, so definitely. But now you've cleared everything already, so you're ready to roll now. Right?
No, that's the thing.
This is the last house?
No, this looked like an innocuous place, because, like, I'll show you in a second when we look around elsewhere first.
That's cruel. Indecision is not becoming in a man.
Yeah. Yeah, there's some very judgmental characters in this game.
Right?
But yeah, on the map, I had assumed that up here, and it'll take a second for it to load for you, that up here, this pink, big-looking building at the top of the map would be the big quest place. Or maybe this octagon up here. Not this tiny little house down there is apparently the quest trigger.
Yeah, that's certainly suggestive.
So yeah, I guess we'll go see what's up here first. Yeah, but this is the giant tower that they were telling me is like the center of all, so I'm kind of surprised. Well, let's see what's over.
But there's two paths as well, because there's the giant pink one, but then there's the other one, right?
Yeah. Oh, okay, well, we trigger something else. Where does this path go? It leads to a small shrine. It was made to seal away something pretty important. Though the thing it was made to seal seal away has been lost now. So it's just a shrine. They're being very vague on purpose. Regardless, I'm sorry, but the Elder's permission is needed to go any further this way. Let's return to the village. Okay, well that rules out one possible path. Yeah, I guess we'll go up to the big tower and probably they'll tell us, oh, we need to go talk to the Elder, and then we'll know we've completed everything. I was playing some game recently where, like, I was going to try to advance the plot, and an NPC kept being like, but have you really talked to everyone yet? Like, over and over? And, like, sure enough, the game would, like, do that unless you really did talk to everybody for some reason. And I'm not sure why. But it was one of those times where I was in, like, okay, let's advance the plot. Let's go. And the game was like, nah. Oh, this is a library. That's kind of cool. Whoa, what is this place? It looks like an awful lot like Lord Eldeal's room. But there seems to be an even bigger collection of books here. Surprised? We call this building the Black Archives. That sounds very ominous.
Right, just a little.
The Black Archives. Yeah, this place is like a collection of Danaan's history and knowledge. Do you gather information about the outside world here as well? We do. I'll leave it to the Elder to explain in more detail, however. The Black Archives and its contents are closely linked to our purpose in this village. You know, this has been bothering me since we got here. I have to know, how did you get from here to Kaznan, which is the village we started in? Now that you mention it, you must have crossed the Sanctuary of Storms, right? Oh, he used the seams. The seams. Wait a minute. Frida, we can't just... Seams? I want to know more too. I demand an explanation as payment for your despicable acts of deceit, Durin. With a giant mechanism like the one in the Sanctuary of Storms, there are bound to be a few gaps in the field, so to speak. We call them seams. In the Sanctuary of Storms, there are places where the lightning strikes happen with less frequency. I've got them memorized and traveled in and out of the primeval lands by exploiting them. We use the same basic principle to avoid losing our memories when we leave the area around Highland. I do understand the concept, but is such a thing really possible, particularly considering how powerful Eldeal is? To an extent, yes, but there's a little more to it as well. Magic, I'm assuming? Magic? That's the power you wield, Kalilica, isn't it? Kind of. I use weapons and items that were charged with magic, but I can't use magic by itself. To use magic, you have to be able to control its energy on your own. Some of the know-how for doing that has been passed down here in Danaan. The methods that are passed down here are the same as those used in ancient kingdom of Celceta. I see. Although, Durin doesn't use it very often. Well, I'm not very good with it, and I don't really want to rely on the same power he did either. Hold on, why are we even talking about this? Hehe, you're always so much fun to rile up. Oh, here comes the fairy. He really is. He's so stupid, he falls for it every time. The same power he did. Who is he? So I'm not really doing too much voice stuff with this game, only because it throws so many characters at you that, like, trying to assign each one an accent and a tone would become completely unmanageable.
Yeah.
So when I streamed Final Fantasy V earlier this year, you've heard Void talk about the 4-job fiesta, right?
Right.
That's like a case where it's a game I've played many times over and over. So that one I'm like, okay, I know what this character, how important this character and this character and this character are going to be, and therefore I can assign voices I can keep consistent without wrecking my throat, and also keep them all straight. But like in a game I played a little while ago called The Messenger, early on in the game, like you go into a shop to, you know, to buy stuff and whatever. So I gave the shopkeeper kind of a goofy voice because I figured he was a one-off character. He ended up having more dialogue than any other character in the game.
And who knew?
Yeah, like 90% of the dialogue in the game is this shopkeeper, because he's like a shopkeeper that everywhere you go, he just shows up somehow.
One of those shopkeepers.
Yeah, and I won't get into all the game's weird lore, but like thankfully the voice wasn't hard to do, but it was just I had to spend a lot of time reading like very important plot and lore dialogue in this goofy shopkeeper voice because I'm like, well, I made this decision, I'm gonna own it.
Nice. Good for you.
All right, I think we've been everywhere. Let's see, we have about 13 minutes left in the stream. I'm trying to decide if we should wrap it up a little early or if we should trigger the next quest event.
What is on for you? I'm looking at my watch. At the very least, I think I'm gonna get out of here and let you make that decision on your own, so I'm not interrupting whatever the next big actual story thing is.
Yeah, because unfortunately, I think with the lag, it's kind of hard to split the dialogue unless we set up whatever the thing is that Troidel knows how to do that he has to teach me. But one of these days...
Yeah, and not even that, but also just me, you know, not interrupting and talking over whatever the next big thing is. So this was fun, though.
Yeah, actually, I might see... So the streams get archived. I might see if I can clip out some of our conversations and maybe we can do something with them, since I feel like we had a good chat in general, you know, not just about the game. So maybe some of it would be of, you know, interest to somebody. So I'll see what I can do with the archive.
All right. Well, otherwise, I'm gonna go punch out for the night, as it were.
Yeah, but yeah, let's do this again sometime, and maybe with a little more like a little less spontaneously, so we can get some of the kinks worked out. And I think it'll be a lot of fun.
Yeah, no, it was very much. My wife and I were sitting on the couch and had finished eating dinner. It's like, what are we gonna do? It'd be like, I don't know. I kind of feel like playing video games or something. And my computer automatically loads Discord, and I just saw that you were streaming. And it's like, you know, it's a rarity when I get to actually hop in when one of you guys are streaming. And usually I'll just pop in and say hi, and then, you know, go about my business. I might stick around for a couple minutes, but then I'll go off and, you know, play Overwatch or whatever it is that I'm super hot, I guess. You know, whatever it is that I'm going to play. But then I remember that you had that thing on Discord. It was like, you know, that might be an interesting thing to try. So I appreciate you allowing me to sort of hijack and experiment.
Oh, not a problem, man. It's been fun. But all right, so I guess I'll go ahead and I'll let you go, Rob. But for those that were watching this and were like, that Rob guy's pretty cool, I want to hear what he has to say in another venue. On geek2geekmedia.com, you can find And Sometimes Rob, which is Rob's podcast where he talks about mostly comic books, but all kinds of other nerdy stuff too. So I'd recommend everyone listening to this now go check that out.
Thanks. I appreciate it. And beyond that, I am on Discord, but usually unless I'm specifically tagged in something, you usually find me on the Geek to Geek Slack. It tends to be where I live.
Yeah, I don't plug the Slack enough. I need to start doing that because I have my Twitch, because I have like my Twitch and my Discord stuff kind of integrated together. And I don't have Slack worked enough to sort that out.
Plug the place where you are, because it's your audience, right? We like to talk about the network and everybody else, but, you know, because I think, was it that Void was more on Discord? I feel like there's somebody else that's also on Discord more as well. And I was trying to hop back and forth, and it was just it's much easier for me. And Slack is where those of us that are content creators tend to do the most talking. So that's why
true.
that because I get those as notifications, that just pushed to me using Slack more than Discord to chat with people.
Makes sense.
All right. Anyway, I will let you go. Good luck. I hope everything works out.
All right.
And this wonderful blue-haired town can be saved, and we can find out what that shrine is, because something tells me it's not just a shrine.
I think you're right. All right, Rob. Have a great night, and thanks again for joining us.
Yeah, man.